Two things almost everybody believes about this decision are out of date in 2026, and both of them probably steered you wrong before you even started. The first is that a heat pump cannot handle a real winter. The second is that the government will hand you a $2,000 tax credit for switching to one. Neither of those holds up anymore, and once you know that, the whole comparison changes. So if you are standing in front of a dying furnace trying to figure out what to replace it with, let me lay out the real picture for 2026. And here is the part most videos skip. This is not actually a choice between two systems. It is a choice between three, and the third one is the option a lot of people should be buying and almost nobody asks for by name. I have spent days digging through manufacturer specs, current install pricing, and the tax law that just changed, and I have talked to people heating homes in mild winters and brutal ones, so you do not have to stitch this together yourself. Let me start with what these three systems actually are, because the whole decision rests on understanding how they make heat. A gas furnace is the system most American homes already have. It burns natural gas or propane inside a metal heat exchanger, and the air blowing across that exchanger can hit 120 to 140 degrees before it goes out through your vents. A furnace only does one job, which is heat. If you also want air conditioning, you need a separate condenser sitting outside, and in summer, the only part of the furnace that runs is the blower fan. A heat pump works on a completely different idea. It does not burn any fuel, and instead of making heat, it simply moves heat that already exists. It uses refrigerant and a compressor, exactly like an air conditioner, except the cycle can run in both directions. In summer, it pulls heat out of your house and dumps it outside. In winter, it runs backwards, pulling heat out of the cold outdoor air and carrying it inside. That sounds like magic when it is freezing out, but there is real warmth in cold air right down past zero, and the unit just concentrates it. Because it relocates heat rather than burning to create it, a heat pump can deliver 2 to 3 times more heat energy than the electricity it uses. That is the entire reason people talk about saving money with one. The trade-off is that the air it pushes out is cooler, usually around 90 to 110 degrees, so it runs longer and steadier instead of in hot blasts. Now, there are two quirks of a heat pump you need to understand before we compare anything. The first is the defrost cycle. On a cold, damp day, frost builds up on the outdoor unit. To clear it, the heat pump briefly flips itself back into air conditioning mode for a few minutes, which warms the outdoor coil and melts the frost off. Then it switches back to heating. The second quirk is backup heat. Every heat pump has a backup heat source for the coldest stretches and for those defrost minutes, so the house never blows cold. On a standard heat pump, that backup is a bank of electric resistance heating strips, basically giant toaster coils, and they are expensive to run and they pull a lot of power. And that brings us to the third system, the one that gets left out of the conversation. A dual fuel setup, also called a hybrid, is a heat pump and a gas furnace working together on one smart thermostat. The heat pump does the heating during mild weather, which is most of the season for most people. Then when it gets truly cold, the thermostat automatically switches off the heat pump and lets the gas furnace take over. So instead of burning through those expensive electric strips for backup, a dual fuel system leans on the furnace. The temperature where it hands off is called the balance point, and it is usually set somewhere between 30 and 40 degrees. You do not flip any switches yourself. The thermostat watches the outdoor temperature and does it for you. Now that you know how each one works, let me put them head to head on the things that actually decide this, one category at a time. The first category is handling the cold, and this is where the old reputation comes from. A gas furnace does not care how cold it is outside. 0 degrees, 10 below, it puts out the same heat. This is the one category where nothing else touches it. A heat pump is where you have to pay attention because there are really two different machines wearing the same name. A cheap single-stage heat pump does lose heating power as the temperature drops, and below freezing it starts leaning hard on those electric backup strips or struggling to keep up. That is the heat pump your neighbor complained about 15 years ago, and that reputation stuck. But a modern cold climate heat pump, the kind with a variable speed inverter compressor, is a genuinely different animal. These units hold their full heating capacity all the way down to about 5 degrees, and they keep working efficiently well below zero, with some tested units running past 15 and 20 degrees below. The Federal Energy Department ran a whole challenge program proving this across the upper Midwest and into Canada. So the honest answer in 2026 is that a good cold climate heat pump handles winter fine across most of the country. The catch is that you have to actually buy that kind, not the bargain unit on the lot. A dual fuel system sidesteps the whole debate. The heat pump handles the mild days, the furnace handles the brutal ones, and you never have to wonder whether your equipment can keep up. For a cold region, that is hard to beat. The second category is comfort, meaning the actual feel of the heat. This one is more personal than people admit. A gas furnace blows that hot blast of air and warms a room fast, and it feels crisp, especially on a raw winter morning. The downside is that it cycles on and off, so you get warm, then it shuts off and cools a bit, then it kicks back on. A heat pump blows cooler air for longer, so the temperature stays more even across the whole house, which a lot of people actually prefer once they get used to it. But on a cold, wet day, a basic heat pump can leave the air feeling a little lukewarm or clammy compared to the oven blast of a furnace. Cold climate models feel warmer than the old ones, but the difference is still there. With dual fuel, you get the steady heat pump feel most of the time, and you can lean on the furnace's crisp heat when it turns truly cold, which keeps the pickiest households happy. The third category is upfront cost, and this is where a lot of decisions actually get made. A gas furnace is the cheapest single box to install, running roughly $3,500 to $10,000 depending on efficiency in your home. But remember, that furnace only heats. If you also need air conditioning, you are buying a separate condenser on top of that, so the real all-in cost for heating and cooling is a lot closer than the furnace price alone makes it look. A heat pump installed runs roughly $8,000 to $18,000 with the cold climate variable speed unit sitting at the high end. That number stings until you remember it is one machine doing the work of two since it replaces the furnace and the air conditioner together. A dual fuel system is the most expensive on hardware, usually around $7,000 to $16,500, with a national average near $9,500 because you are essentially buying two heating systems. One more thing on cost. If you switch a gas-only home over to a standard heat pump, you sometimes have to pay an electrician to run new high-voltage wiring for those backup heat strips, which adds to the bill. Dual fuel often skips that because it reuses the furnace for backup. The fourth category is operating cost, the monthly running expense, and this is the one where I have to correct the older videos directly. For years, the pitch was simple. A heat pump is more efficient, so it saves you money every winter, and the federal government gives you a $2,000 tax credit on top to sweeten the switch. So here is what actually changed. That federal tax credit, the one worth up to $2,000 for a heat pump, expired at the end of December 2025. A bill signed in the summer of 2025 ended it. So if you install in 2026, there is no federal heat pump tax credit waiting for you at tax time, and the high efficiency furnace credit is gone too. If you happen to install in 2025, you can still claim it on that year's return, but going forward, that carrot is off the table. That does not mean a heat pump stops saving money. It just means the savings now have to stand on their own without the credit, and whether they do depends almost entirely on your local prices. Because a heat pump moves heat instead of burning fuel, it is usually cheaper to run than gas in mild and mixed climates with a modern, efficient unit. But that is not guaranteed everywhere. If you live somewhere with cheap natural gas and expensive electricity, a gas furnace can actually cost less to run month to month. To put real numbers on it, in a 2,000 square foot home, a heat pump might cost around $1,100 a year to heat where electricity is pricey, while a high-efficiency furnace runs closer to $760 in that same spot. Flip those prices around with cheap power and costly gas, and the heat pump wins easily. So the running cost answer is not a national one. It comes down to your gas bill against your electric bill, and you should look at your own rates before you assume either way. There is still some money out there, just not from the federal government. A handful of states run rebate programs funded earlier that can knock several $1,000s off a heat pump, sometimes up to $8,000 for income-qualified households. But those vary state by state. Many are income limited, and several have already run out of money or closed during 2026, so you cannot count on one until you confirm it exists where you live. Your local utility and the equipment maker often have their own rebates too, and those are the most reliable money left. The short version is this. The federal tax credit is no longer a reason to buy a heat pump because it is gone. The reasons that remain are the running savings where your rates favor it, and the fact that one machine handles both your heating and your cooling. You might be wondering about all the talk of governments banning gas and whether you are about to be forced off your furnace. For most people, that worry is overblown. The first big city gas ban in Berkeley, California was struck down in federal court and is effectively dead, which blocks similar bans across much of the western United States. Most of the country has no ban on installing a gas furnace at all. What is actually happening is quieter. A few regions are phasing in emissions rules on new furnaces years down the road, and some cities use building codes that nudge new construction toward electric without outright banning gas. So unless you live in one of a small number of areas with rules already on the calendar, nobody is taking your furnace away. You are choosing on cost and comfort, not because gas got outlawed where you live. The fifth category is lifespan. A gas furnace tends to last about 15 to 25 years, partly because it only runs during heating season. A heat pump runs year-round since it is also your air conditioner, so it wears a little faster and usually lasts around 12 to 20 years. A dual fuel system splits the difference because the heat pump side only runs during mild weather, so it can stretch a bit longer than one carrying the whole load alone. None of these is fragile, but if absolute longevity is your top priority, the furnace has a slight edge. There is one more factor that is not really a rating category, but matters more than people expect, and that is what happens in a power outage. A gas furnace runs on regular household voltage and mostly just needs power for the blower fan. So with the right setup, a small portable generator can keep your heat running when the grid goes down. A standard heat pump with those high voltage electric backup strips needs far more power than a small generator can give. So in a long outage, you can be stuck in the cold. A dual fuel system inherits the furnace's advantage here, since the furnace is the backup. If you live somewhere with shaky power during winter storms, that is worth weighing. So let me pull this together into who should actually pick what, because that is the real question. Go with a gas furnace paired with an air conditioner. If you live where natural gas is cheap and electricity is expensive, if you love that crisp hot blast of furnace heat, if your budget is tight and you already have working ductwork and cooling, or if there is a real chance you move in the next few years and do not want to overspend on equipment the next owner gets to enjoy. Go with a heat pump if you are in a mild, mixed, or warm climate, if you want a single system for heating and cooling, if your electricity rate is reasonable or you have solar panels, or if you are replacing an aging furnace and air conditioner at the same time and can roll them into one purchase. If you are in a cold area, buy the cold climate variable speed model, not the cheapest unit on the lot, and it will serve you well. Go with dual fuel if you live somewhere with cold winters but you still want the heat pump savings through the long, mild stretches of the season. You get efficiency most of the year, guaranteed furnace-level comfort and reliability on the coldest nights, and generator-friendly backup heat if your power is unreliable. It costs the most up front, but it is the most versatile of the three, and for a cold climate home that already has gas at the house, it is the one I would lean toward. So here is your next move. Before you call anybody, pull two numbers off your own utility bills, what you pay per unit of gas and what you pay per unit of electricity, because that ratio decides whether a heat pump saves you money or not. Then find out your area's typical lowest winter temperatures so you know whether you need a cold climate unit or a dual fuel setup. When you get quotes, ask the installer for a proper load calculation rather than a guess, and have them check your existing ductwork, because heat pump air is cooler and sometimes needs bigger ducts than an old furnace was running. And check your state energy office and your local utility for current rebates, since the federal credit is gone, but local money may still be on the table. I have put links to the equipment types, the rebate lookups, and the sizing tools down in the description so you can run your own numbers. Match the system to your climate, your rates, and how long you are staying, and the right answer for your home will be staring back at you once those three things are lined up.